an original MCM production.
Good morning. We'll call the full commission to order. Will the commission secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Bohl?
Here.
Commissioner Eli?
Here.
Commissioner Gramling?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson? Here. Commissioner Krieger?
Here.
Commissioner Manzanet?
Here.
Commissioner Martinsek is excused. Commissioner Perez is expected. Commissioner Swan?
Here.
Commissioner Hermes?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the proceedings of the regular commission meeting held April 24th, 2017. Accepting a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
By Commissioner Manzanet, second by Commissioner Swan. Is there additions or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor to approve the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. The minutes are so approved. New business, operations and maintenance report for April 2017. Pat and Scott, please.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Patrick Obanoff, District's Manager of Contract Compliance.
Scott Royer, Veolia's General Manager.
With the Operations and Maintenance Report for April 2017. Happy to report the district was in full compliance with our Wisconsin Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. Veolia was in full compliance with the Operation and Maintenance Agreement. We did not have any combined sewer overflows or separate sewer overflows in April. Our percent capture this year so far, 100%.
Okay, this chart shows our influent and effluent characteristics for both water reclamation facilities, and everything is within their normal parameters. This shows Jones Island effluent biochemical oxygen demand and total suspended solids, and we're well below the permit limit as well as the contract limit. This shows South Shore's effluent BOD and TSS, and again, we're well below the permit and contract limit. You'll see the BOD has come up a little bit over the last couple of months. That's really related to the extended high flows that we've had over the last couple of months. This shows both plants' effluent fecal coliform, and again, we're well within the contract limit. This shows Jones Island effluent total phosphorus, and again, well within the permit limit. It shows South Shore's performance on phosphorus, and again, well below the permit limit. And this shows the 24-month limit in our performance. And again, we're well within that limit.
Just want to make a note on this. At South Shore, we have 3 limits in our permit related to phosphorus. We have a monthly limit, the 6-month limit, and this 24-month rolling average limit. It went into effect in 2015. This is the first month it was reportable. We've been updating the commission every 6 months or so, just tracking where we've been. Now it is going to be measured monthly as it is a rolling average. So if the commission would like us to change how often we report to you, we're fine with that. Otherwise, we can keep showing you on a 6-month average or 6-month basis. So we'd welcome any feedback from you on that. And moving into the conveyance and storage system, you can see here as Scott mentioned, we've had a lot of rain that's caused high flows down at South Shore particularly. We've been above average for precipitation each month this year. In April in particular, we were nearly 3 inches above normal. We've had 6 storm events in April that put 454 million gallons of storm event-related sewage into the tunnel. Again, no combined sewer overflows or separate sewer overflows this month or year-to-date. And a graphical representation where it's pretty easy to see how above normal we are for precipitation. And then moving into biosolids production inventory, the green line shows the product requested by the district's marketing group. The orange line shows the production at the plant. You can see demand is strong. The request by our marketing group is more than we're able to produce at this time of the year, but the spring shipping season is starting to wind down, and that production will slowly catch back up. You can see the inventory was at a low in March, climbed just a little bit in April. That'll continue to climb as we move throughout the year. We are well below our operational maximum silo inventory of 10,000 tons.
Okay, this shows our maintenance backlog. And as you can see, we're again holding our own on preventive maintenance work orders over 90 days and corrective maintenance work orders over 90 days. Through a lot of work and help with district staff, we've been able to continue to meet all of the maintenance metrics related to these work orders over 90 days. Unfortunately, we have to report some recordable incidents that occurred in April. Just to clarify this chart or this graph, there was actually a total of 2 recordable incidents, one of which was a lost time incident. I can give you a little bit of detail on those 2 incidents. In one incident, we had an employee who was working on a conveyor in the silos, and that employee was using a 4-foot step ladder, which was appropriate for the work he was doing. And unfortunately, in descending that ladder, his foot got caught on the second step. He fell off the ladder and fractured his pelvis. So that's our lost time incident. The other recordable incident was at South Shore, and it was an employee who was handling it's a heavy hose that they use for discharging from a pump when we're dewatering an aeration basin. And it has a rubber coating, and within that rubber coating is reinforcing wire that it can also be used as a suction hose, so it keeps the hose from collapsing. And unfortunately, that wire at the end of the hose made its way through the rubber covering. He didn't see it. He was wearing gloves, and it punctured through the glove and into his hand, and he required 2 stitches. So again, unfortunately, we had some recordable incidents, one this time, and certainly not something we like to see. But since those 2 incidents, we've met with every employee with a safety stand down, and as a matter of fact, my boss, Chuck Melker, the Senior Vice President of our Central Region, also talked to all our employees about safety and working on what we can do to improve the safety program. And there's just one other thing I'd like to mention to you. Jeff Spence put a card at each of your locations, and Veolia and MMSD are holding the annual Supplier Diversity Symposium on June 3rd, and it's a great opportunity for us to get our buyers, all of the people who buy materials and services, to meet with SWMB suppliers and establish relationships so we can continue to try to improve our performance on supplier diversity. Be glad to take any questions.
Questions from the commission? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Operations Committee report. Commissioner Krieger, would you lead us through that effort, please?
Yes, the Operations Committee did meet, and they considered 5 items, file numbers 17043-5 through 17-047-5. All of these items, these 5 items, were recommended for approval to the full commission. At this point, unless there's questions, I will make the motion to approve all of these 5 items.
The motion's on the floor.
Second from
Okay. Appropriately seconded by Commissioner Bowl. Further discussion upon these items. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All 5 items are approved.
Thank
Further report from the Operations Committee.
thank you, and there's no further report today.
Thank you, Commissioner Krieger. We move next to the Policy Finance Personnel Committee report. Commissioner Manzanet, would you lead us through that one?
Outstanding. Good morning. The Policy and Finance Personnel Committee did meet. There were 5 items also that were considered. I would like to take items 7, 8, 9, and 11 in bulk, and make a motion, as those items were recommended for approval. I'll make a motion to approve said items.
Thank you. The motion by Commissioner Manzanet, the second by Commissioner Swan. Are there further discussion upon these items? On the 4 items as presented, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The items have passed and are so approved. Continue on, Commissioner Manzanet.
Thank you. Item number 12, 17-038-4, the authorization of providing the sale of the issuance of $80 million worth of general obligation sewage system bonds, Series 2017A, levying taxes for the payment thereof, and all related details. This requires a 2/3 affirmative vote from the commission for adoption. So, Madam,
You can go ahead and make the motion, and we'll...
Commission,
go
we don't have the
forward.
resolution. As you know, the sale of the bonds occurred this morning. We're passing around a summary. We received 10 bids for the bonds, and we're working on the resolution right now reflecting the numbers that we received today. So if we could put this on hold, we'll have...
Right, when bond council comes back down, you'll have the formal resolution, the detailed, lengthy resolution that's attached. I will tell you, it was extremely successful. I'm happy.
Yeah, he's not crying because he's sad. He's really happy.
10 bids, 2.816.
really,
Yes, that's our lowest ever.
congratulations.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So I think if we could put this on hold until that resolution, it'll come down this morning, right?
It should be within about an hour, so.
Oh, well, hopefully before that.
And you can, if you look at the sheet I passed out, you can see how close it got, especially between Piper Jaffray, the winning, and Citigroup. I mean, they both bid 2.816, but it went to the next decimal, 2.8165 versus 2.8168. So, and to put it in comparison, in 2015, we had the lowest ever rate, and that was just under 2.94, and the Fed has raised 3 times the discount rate. And I know that's on the short term, but it usually extends out, so this was great. And 10 bidders is the most we've ever had, so
Becoming popular.
good news.
Well, then we'll postpone without objection till later in this meeting.
Well, I'll put item number 12 on hold for now.
Come back to Mark.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Manzanet. That moves us smartly into the Organization and Administration Executive Director's Report. Mr. Schaefer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Exciting news, as you heard about the bond sale today. And then we always hear the O&M report, but it's just a continued display of the excellence that we're showing here at the district and our permit compliance. So it's something we should all be very proud of. The first item, there's no staff recognitions this month. The first item will be the Public Policy Forum's report. Rob Hankins here. This is the Milwaukee's Region Water Infrastructure Challenges report that the forum put together for us.
Morning, Rob.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Joining me is Ben Juarez, a fiscal researcher for the Public Policy Forum. If it's okay with you, we will tag team on this presentation. And now that we know that we have an hour, I think we'll just stretch this.
Yeah, I was like, oh.
I still have the gavel.
But seriously, we appreciate the opportunity to come before you. What we plan to do this morning is give you a brief overview of a detailed report, about a 60-page report called Beneath the Streets that the forum released just a few weeks ago. This is actually the second in a multi-part series of reports on local government infrastructure. And the premise behind this two-year research project is twofold. First of all, as I know many of the elected officials on the commission are aware, the forum has done considerable work looking at the parks and cultural institutions owned by Milwaukee County. And examining in great detail just that very small segment of local government infrastructure certainly sounded some alarm bells for us. We found some very substantial gaps in terms of what is currently being spent to maintain and rehabilitate and replace infrastructure related to the county parks and cultural institutions. And it made us recognize that if this is the case for this small subset of our overall local government infrastructure, what is the bigger picture? And that also feeds into a larger question that we've been exploring, which is the revenue streams that are in place to support local government in Greater Milwaukee. So we thought it would be an important project to go and to tabulate and document the full range of local government infrastructure in this community. Obviously, what impacts our ability to finance our wastewater infrastructure needs is not only your own financial capacity, but also this relationship between the city and the county and municipal governments, that if all of these infrastructure needs are converging at once, it's going to impact the ability of each of you, potentially, to do what needs to be done to take care of your infrastructure. So the first report in the series, we looked at City of Milwaukee streets and bridges and Milwaukee County trunk highways, trunk highway bridges and buses. That report came out in September of 2016. The report that we're about to share with you is the second, which looks at not only MMSD's infrastructure, but also sewers owned by the City of Milwaukee and also the Milwaukee Waterworks. I'm sure Alderman Bohl will be interested in our, we'll give some brief tidbits from those as well. Continuing in the series, we will also have pieces on buildings and structures owned by the city and the county. We will take another look at parks and cultural institutions as well as city playgrounds and parks. And then we will conclude with another piece, which I think will be highly relevant to you, that will come out sometime early next year, which will put it all together and speak to the overall financial capacity of this region to address our infrastructure needs. So that's just a brief overview. I'm going to turn it over to Ben to give you some information regarding what we found. And just before doing so, our strategy here was to look at two things. Number one, let me point out, we are not engineers. We don't have the ability to independently assess your infrastructure and that of the other jurisdictions. But we did think it was important to put in layman's terms, to give our assessment of the condition of the infrastructure. So we do that, and then again, we look at this issue of financial capacity. So Mr. Juarez will address infrastructure condition, then he'll turn it back over to me for financial capacity.
So we looked at the sewers, deep tunnel, NWSRS, and the reclamation facilities for the most part. Several assets in the reclamation facilities. As you can see, do you have? You do. Okay. So there's we use water meters to kind of give an overall rating for each. Is this it? Okay. So what we found was that of the 254 miles of MIS pipes, 70% were still have 70 to 100 years of useful life. 67 miles, 26%, 60 to 30 years, and 10 miles, 4%, 20 or below. And you'll definitely be able to see that MMSD is certainly looking at any type of repairs in those 10 miles coming up once Rob discusses the financial impact. So we looked at, we didn't look at every single asset at the reclamation facilities, in part because not every asset has level 1 information, i.e. installation repair and remaining useful life, in order to get a good understanding of where the ages are. However, for the most part, the very high or very important assets at the reclamation facilities were looked at, and we saw that with tanks, pumps, dryers, conveyance, et cetera, that you see up there. We looked at replacement that needs to be done either soon or within 5 years, and so those are the numbers we got. Tanks at 54%, pumps at 43%, dryers and what goes along with the dryers at 38%, conveyance at 29%, electrical motors at 27%, and building structures 6%. Clarifiers are all good as well. So for the most part, what we found was that the majority of all of these assets in total reclamation facilities are in very good condition. MMSD is doing a very good job at cataloging and calculating their needs. That's the wrong one. There we go.
So let me just take you backwards again to that first slide. So again, this is clearly in our minds, you are, the commission and the district are doing a solid job maintaining, taking care of their infrastructure. We don't want your heads to swell too much. I mean, this is frankly what we would have expected. This is if MMSD is not doing a good job with capital planning, with capital management, then something's really wrong, because that, of course, is the primary purpose, is to make sure that these $3.3 billion worth of assets that you own are in good working condition and are protecting public health and the environment. And clearly, we did not see any red flags with regard to the way that you are taking care of your infrastructure. It doesn't mean that there aren't needs there, but as again, you can see from the meters, other than the reclamation facilities, where the only reason you did not get a green is just because a substantial portion of the assets are nearing their useful life, but still nothing to worry about based on the pace with which you maintain and repair. When we now look at financial capacity, here again we give you a strong rating. Where there is a potential warning flag, which you are obviously well aware of. Let me also add that we are impressed by the way that you do your long-range capital planning. We comment in the report that the manner in which you lay out your multi-year plan is unique in our world, and this is no knock on the city or the county, because again, you have greater wherewithal to do this. But the fact that your 6-year financial plan not only cites specific projects, but actually contains what you believe to be what will be the appropriate use of borrowing versus cash financing, what you think the levy increase is going to need to be, et cetera. These are all details that we look for when we try to evaluate whether an organization is doing sound financial planning. So we're seeing all of the right things happening there. What we are also seeing here is that after a considerable push for major investment in the years just preceding what you're seeing on this chart, you were able to lower your annual capital spending for a few years, and now there's going to be a need to ramp it up pretty substantially beginning in 2021. And of course, this information is based on what Executive Director Schaefer and the staff feel have been able to identify so far. The 2050 long-range plan, of course, will dictate, once that is done, more specificity behind this, so I'm sure you'll be seeing greater details. But as of the time that we were collecting this information, we are seeing the potential major increase in capital spending needed in the 2021-2022 timeframe. Breaking it down by water reclamation facilities and conveyance, you can see the numbers here. Again, whereas today you're at 44.9 million, and that can actually go down over the next couple of years, the jump up in 2021. On the conveyance systems, again, we see that jump up in the out years. Now, where this could be potentially cause for concern would be if you were already maintaining a debt load that was a trouble spot. And as we can see, your outstanding debt is forecast to go down over the next several years, which would certainly place you in a pretty strong position by 2021 or 2022 when the surge in capital spending needs to occur. To do more borrowing. And again, your fiscal staff has laid out what you anticipate to be the borrowing. Certainly, this morning's good news on the solid interest rate will help with these debt numbers and with your debt service numbers. So this is all very tentative, but again, this is something that we would look for, and so we don't see this as a major red flag. The fact that you're going to have to enhance your capital spending, given that your debt has been going down considerably. Where obviously there may be an impact is on the property tax levy. And so according to the current plan, you would be looking at 4% annual increases in the levy in order to take care of the projects that have been identified, and again, much of this is somewhat tentative, between now and 2022. So is 4% per year a problem? I mean, that's in the eye of the beholder. We certainly acknowledge that this is not the first time that you have been told in your long-range plan that you're going to have to be looking at 4 or 5% annual property tax levy increases, and different things happen during the course of the actual planning. There are certain projects that may fall off for very good reasons. So again, there's no certainty that this is going to be the impact on the property tax levy, but as things stand, it's just something that we all should be aware of. Is 4% too much or not enough? That's, again, a very subjective opinion. 4% is above the level that you're accustomed to over the past few years at MMSD, and it is slightly above CPI, not slightly above, about double CPI, and it is above the annual property tax levy increases that we've been seeing at the city and the county level every year. But again, we don't know for sure. But this is something to keep in mind. And again, our message to the community is this is important infrastructure. It's expensive infrastructure. It's infrastructure that needs to be taken care of. And this just may be a fact of life that this is what it's going to take. We also took a look at what this would mean for the average property tax payer. This is the owner of a median-sized home in the MMSD area. And so is a $42 increase in one's property tax bill if indeed you were to go up 4% per year every year between 18 and 22. Is that outrageous? I don't think most people would say it is, but it is a property tax levy increase for the average homeowner nonetheless. So that's sort of our very high-level summary of what we found in the report. Again, something that's going to be important for us and for all of you is to consider, to the extent that you do need to maintain these steady increases in the property tax, what are the other jurisdictions in the city of Milwaukee and in Milwaukee County doing? Because after all, in the end, it's the residents of the district that are going to have to absorb all of this. And so that's something we're going to be keeping our eye on, and we're going to be able to give you some additional context for your decision-making when we come out with the last report in our series sometime toward the middle of next year. We'll certainly be happy to take questions on what we found regarding MMSD. I did just want to conclude just with a few slides laying out for you some of our findings with regard to city sewers, which are obviously very relevant to you, but also the Milwaukee Waterworks, just because, again, these are important pieces of infrastructure that are going to have a bearing on the community's overall capacity. So just very quickly, in terms of the infrastructure condition snapshot for the City of Milwaukee Department of Public Works sewers, As you can see, we don't see major red flags there as well. In the wake of the historic rainstorms a few years ago, City of Milwaukee DPW vastly increased its capital spending to address some deficiencies that had been identified in the city sewer system. As a result, they are, certainly we would have had a different picture 5 years ago, but for now, they're actually in a place where they can now ramp down spending a little bit because they've taken care of some of their most pressing needs. What we see here is the sewers with index ratings of 65 or below, which would indicate a need for relatively near-term replacement. So that's about 104 miles of sewers. And the city's goal right now is to repair or replace 27 miles per year. So we don't see that as as an unreasonable number. There is a caveat, however, that all of these city sewers are not rated. So these are the sewers that we know about. There obviously could be additional. In terms of fiscal capacity, here again, because of the city's ability now to ramp down spending after a major surge, the next 5 years look pretty manageable. But that being said, we are going to need to see regular, in all likelihood, 3 to 5% annual increases in sewer and stormwater fees, and that's because the debt service, because of the surge in spending over the previous 5 years, the debt service is going up, and as you can see, has gone up and is projected to continue to stay at about that level for a while for the city. There is very healthy surplus within the city sewer maintenance fund, so again, no ominous red flags by any means. But again, much the same message that we give to you is that it's going to take, in all likelihood, regular, steady 3 to 5% increases in fees to get the work done. Finally, in terms of MWW, we did a pretty exhaustive analysis. You can just see from this snapshot that the trouble spots here, and there are red flags, are with regard to MWW's water mains and service lines. I'm sure you're all aware of the lead service line issue. 45% or 76,000, is it miles or pipes?
76,000 pipes.
76,000 lead service lines are owned by the city of Milwaukee and at some point need to be replaced. Per the current approach, and this is a rapidly changing strategy here, there's a lot of long-term financial planning going on right now at MWW. There's going to be detailed plans shared with the Common Council in the fall. Even if over 50 years we try to replace those 76,000 lead service lines, that's going to have a pretty significant impact on both ratepayers and potentially on city property taxpayers. In terms of water mains, which is irrespective of the issue of lead service lines, MWW has been at or near the threshold for what the industry standard is in terms of water main breaks. Consequently, the PSC is requiring the waterworks to increase its annual number of miles of water main replacements. They were at 3 or 4 miles just a few years ago. They have to get up to 20 miles within the next couple of years. And so in terms of fiscal capacity, that's going to be a challenge. Here you can see how their capital expenditures are projected to soar, primarily because of both this water main issue, where annual spending has to rise from $8 million to $31 million, and the lead service lines. And that's a very preliminary number on the lead service lines. That assumes that MWW gets up to about 1,250 replacements per year. At that rate, it would still take more than 50 years to replace all 76,000. So it's still unclear whether that's the pace at which they can proceed. But even at that pace, you can see how much spending is going to have to increase for MWW. We cannot give you any precise estimate yet because there are so many variables involved in terms of what that's going to mean for ratepayers. There also could be a property tax levy impact, given that the city is committing to helping homeowners with the privately owned portions of service lines. But again, something for you all to keep in mind as you look at your future capital budgets is that this is going to have an impact on City of Milwaukee ratepayers going forward. So with that, we will conclude, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
If I could add, before there's questions from the commission, thank you, Rob and Ben, for doing this report. I think it did shine a light on some issues for us, and we're going to keep maintaining the system as we have. We've passed out a one-pager. We always forecast 4% rate increases. We always try to do a conservative approach when we're looking at our 6-year financial plan, and that's some of the numbers that the forums looked at. If you notice on the paragraph at the bottom of that table, and as you'll see, we've never gone above 4%. We always stay in the 2 to 3% range. We also have a lot of debt service that we're going to be retiring over the time period. So as that debt service goes down and the spending goes up, we're trying to balance that out to have very minimal increases. But as you can see, through 2021, the increase will be about 14% as opposed to 38%. So we feel pretty good about that and the ability to stay ahead of the work that we have ahead of us. And even at the 4%, when I see $308 a year, that's less than $1 a day to be able to flush your toilet and know that it's being treated wisely. So I still look at that as a very big selling point for this region for bringing economic development back. So just my 2 cents.
I'd just like to add one point too. One of the slides Rob presented was showing our debt over that time period. And as you're well aware, we use a combination of general obligation bonds and clean water fund loans because we're usually financing projects that result in assets with a life of 20 years. What I think is important to look at is that even though we have this increase in project spending, which was planned, our debt actually goes down. It's not like, okay, we're going to have a 38% increase and now you're going up to $1.4 billion in debt. It goes from 900 some down to 830 million by 2021. So I think that's important to recognize that it's not all tax levy and billing to non-members every year to fund these projects. We're using debt. And as long as we keep our controls, the 2.5% limit on outstanding debt to equalized value and 25% cash financing, it won't get away from the district, and our fiscal capacity will still remain strong. And I think the only other thing, when they pointed out the reclamation facilities, remember every time we come to the budget, the WPAP was finished in 1996. So a lot of the machinery equipment's 20 years or older. So we've been waiting for this, and we are going to be replacing it, but on schedule. That's all I would add.
Thank you. Rob and Ben, thank you for your time working on this report and sharing some of the points this morning. Thank you for your caution and not allow our heads to get too big. I think that's important for us to realize as we go forward. Kevin touched upon one thing that I wanted to ask you about, the selling point that the information you have in your report really represents for our region when it comes to economic development, not only encouraging investment here from within the region, but from outside of the region. And I guess my question is kind of twofold. One, as you've taken this information out to audiences locally, what have the reactions been, and whether it's about MMSD or Waterworks or DPW, I'm curious to know what you've heard from people, both in public venues like this and maybe behind the scenes. What's the attitude and temperature among those audiences that you've taken it out to? And then secondly, how do you see this information playing out as a selling point for the region as we look outside the region to bring attention to the metro area as a place to do business? I think that the comments and direction of the report speaks to the users, which include business, but many people go right to the residents, as you have the household, average annual household charge. We see ourselves as a tremendous asset to the business community and the industrial business community in particular. So your thoughts about that aspect also would be, I'd be interested in them.
So thank you for Commissioner Gremling. With regard to your first question, I think that the reaction so far has still been sort of muted in that we still haven't been able to present the big picture. I think a very important point that we're making here is, we have, and I think justifiably, had a lot of conversation in this community about the future of the cultural institutions and the parks and the transit system and the potential need for new funding sources if we really want to maintain and expand those assets. Here's a set of infrastructure that people don't see, that people don't know is out there unless something goes wrong, and then it's a major crisis. And it takes rigor, it takes the type of hard work that your professional staff and your contractors do to stay on top of this need, but it's expensive. And so I don't know where we're headed as a community. You would hope that we don't get to the point, so now speaking to your economic development question, without question, having good roads and bridges and wastewater treatment systems and clean water are essential for our economic competitiveness. I hate to sort of prejudge our final report, but it certainly, it appears to us that in terms of the existing revenue streams that we have to support taking care of our assets, those aren't sufficient. So the question becomes, do we need to prioritize? Do sewer mains or sewers and water mains have to take priority over museums and zoos or buses? Or are we as a community going to be willing to look at this big picture and try to determine how it is that we're going to pay for all of this? And so we don't know that yet. I think, though, that that's the conversation that we're hoping starts to occur, because, again, we just look so far at just the needs with regard to transportation, water, and sewer, and we see a steady impact on ratepayers and property taxpayers. And on the one hand, you could say, well, that ought to be expected. But on the other, do we have the capacity, based on state property tax limits and other factors, do we have the capacity to actually ask ratepayers and taxpayers to do what it takes to take care of this infrastructure?
May I follow up with just one other point? We've talked at different points in the past here among the commission over the years about growing the pie. So not just thinking about the pie that we have right now and how we're going to slice it up to cover the kind of cost that you just described, but as we look to growing the pie regionally, my sense has always been that the excess capacity at Waterworks and the excess capacity here are selling points that have not been used to their full advantage when looking outside the region to attract water users in. And I'd like to think that you might concur with that, but might there be an opportunity to lift up those assets as we think about growing the region's economy by attracting water users who can tap into the excess capacity at Waterworks and to tap into the abilities of the sewerage district here to treat water in a highly economically competitive way and in a way that is protective of the environment.
Yes.
Might your report actually call that out when you get to that point in time as a way to grow the pie, not just slice the pie that we have right now before us?
Yes, and that's a great point, and it's a point that has been, you're not the first to have that reaction to, well, gee, if we have excess capacity, then maybe we should be looking at that end. And obviously, the public policy forum, for those of you who know us, the mayors or former village presidents on the commission know this. We think that service sharing, that finding ways, that this can't, in the end, just be about asking ratepayers and taxpayers to pay more. It also has to be about looking at ways to make sure that our existing assets, their potential is maximized. So I think without question, and so that is an eye-opener and something that in our final report we will certainly be looking into further.
Thank you.
Rob and Ben, again, thanks for your report. I have 2 points to make, one of which, as you've spoken and directed some attention within your report to Milwaukee's need to replace the lead water laterals. MMSD, some almost 10 years ago, took on an initiative to replace their local sewer laterals on private property by giving due monies back to the municipalities to do that very thing. So we're 10 years into that process right now, and it's a process that I'd like to identify that we're very proud of. I didn't really see that contained in your report, but I didn't read it word for word either. So that was something I thought was maybe a little lacking in your report, and we're already starting to try to cover that long-term issue and have been for a number of years. The second thing is, we're very lucky to have a public policy forum in here of such high integrity of yours, and the one that you lead, Rob. Many times, commissions and oversight bodies such as ours would grimace at the thought of having an entity such as yours focus their attention upon us. I think, and I'll speak for the commission here, we kind of welcomed that coming from you, not only because of your integrity, but because of our integrity in the way we handle our systems. I think we stand pretty tall in the order of utilities across not only the country but the world now as leaders in this industry, and that is a complete result of our administration and our employees in Veolia on the long-term contract that we have with a firm such as Veolia to make our organization what it is today and represent the leadership role that we do represent in the country. So thank you for your work. We welcome your further work and focus as you progress into the larger picture and other infrastructure needs. And we stand ready to assist you in any way and capacity that we need.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just on your first question, and you're correct, we struggled hard to try to develop a scope that we could manage. And so we did make a decision that we weren't going to look as much at what's happening in the municipalities in terms of their need to replace their sewer lines and the assistance that you've given. But you're right. So it was not covered in the report, and it certainly could have been, and it's a very important part of the story, and also perhaps a good example for the Milwaukee Water Works to look at as it struggles with its challenge. I would also like to say, and I was remiss in not saying this at the beginning, once again, I mean, your staff was so cooperative and so forthcoming, and Kevin and Mark and the whole team, and we very much appreciate it. And again, I want to thank you for your comments. You know, we don't see ourselves as a government watchdog that's looking to, you know, pile on and be, you know, among all of the other critics who are just criticizing government when it does something wrong and never giving it credit when it does something right, which is the vast majority of the time. So we see ourselves as providing information that hopefully will be useful to you, so we sincerely appreciate your comments.
Other comments from the commission? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Would like to also recognize Greg Hottinger. Wave your hand, Greg. He did a lot of the really nitty-gritty work with the asset management system to make sure that the forum had all this information to judge from. And I think your tagline's perfect: impartial research, informed debate. I really like that. So thank you so much, Rob. Moving next is the Leading Utilities of the World Award. Anna's passing that around right now. This is from the Global Water Intelligence Group. We did not seek this award out, never heard of this award. In fact, this award never existed until this time. And we are one of the first recipients of the award. And they've also asked me to serve on the Water Leaders Group to select the future recipients of the award. It is supposed to signify the gold standard of leading utilities in the world, not just the U.S. So this has extreme pride. So that's it. We'll turn it over to Tom, and we'll talk about Esbrook Dam.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Tom Chapman. I'm a Senior Project Manager here at MMSD. Come to describe a project that we've embarked on, the Esbrook Dam removal. About 2 years ago, the MMSD Commission passed a resolution supporting Esbrook Dam removal. And in that light, we purchased the dam in January of this year. It's located just downstream of the Port Washington Bridge in Estabrook Park. It's been under orders for as much as 8 years ago from DNR to repair or replace it. And we will strive to do that next year this time. Hopefully we'll have that accomplished. And after that, the county will revert to county land with MMSD conservation easement placed over that area. It's a picture of the aerial view of the dam located south of Hampton, just downstream. Port Washington Road Bridge is just off to the left. This is more of a bird's eye view of the dam itself. It's made up of two parts separated by an island. There are a series of what's called ice breakers to protect debris and ice from moving to the left through the gated structure. All of those parts we will remove. We have planned on May 31st to have a public meeting. We'll hold that meeting at the Holiday Inn just near the dam here. It's just by the Port Washington Road Bridge. And we will show 4 boards that I'll go through here at that public meeting. It's a Wednesday between 4 and 7, open house style with staff at boards. DNR is also asked to have a 5th table, so they'll be at a table to take questions, comments, and discuss the project. This is the first of the 4 boards showing the existing conditions. The green on the map is wetland areas. We will have some small areas of wetland impacts that we will request permits from the U.S. Army Corps and DNR for. The project itself will be accomplished in 2 phases. The first phase will be a removal of some sediment that's noted in the very middle of the page there, a little shaded or a cross-hatched area.
Tom, use the mouse. The mouse. The mouse.
I don't know that I've done that.
The mouse.
Oh, there you go. This area here is a small area of contaminated sediments, urban soils, about 250 yards or 25 trucks. And we plan to move that material out as our first step. We'll move that through the access road that's along this route that was used primarily by the EPA during their cleanup of soil material over the past 4 or 5 years. They've worked on contaminated sediment removal upstream of the dam and have completed that work. So we want to reuse that same path and remove this sediment as a first step. Then the second step will be phase 2, where we'll remove the parts of the dam, the crest spillway part and the gated structure part and the ice breakers. That we've shown 2 access routes that the contractor could choose to take. We'll let the contractors determine through their bidding process what the most advantageous way to remove the material. They could either go south through this same area where the contaminated sediment will be removed, or they could go through the park up onto Hampton this way. Estimate about 200 truckloads total over 3 or 4 months. That's 4 or 5 trucks per day of debris material being removed and taken off-site, properly disposed of. And the 4th board will show the post-project conditions with the dam removed. We'll restore the access routes wherever the trucks have been using them and properly vegetate them and have a vegetation maintenance establishment period that will restore and make sure everything is put back. So, and that's the project we hope to begin on. Later tonight, Kevin and I plan to go over to Glendale Common Council and present the same board information to the the Glendale aldermen, and keep everyone appraised of our period of time here where we accept comments and discuss the project with folks.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Mr. Gramley?
Tom, is the purpose of the meeting upcoming to really push information out to the community about timeline and scope of the project, or are there significant points where you're really looking for feedback? I'm assuming it's more the former, but.
Yeah, there are certainly not a lot of alternatives that are allowed when you're removing something like this. There can be comments that could be relevant to the side slopes and how we leave the area, and we're happy to hear from folks on what they may want for any monuments that we might want to place, memorializing the dam, or trails, or other aspects that might happen on the land surface.
Thank you.
Further question? Thank you, Tom.
And that concludes the report.
Thank you, and we've got some numbers back.
Well, there will be 10 minutes. What I'm going to do is give this a Hannah to pass out. It's a little more details about the sale. Also, the chair and Anna, you'll have to sign that.
So if you would like, Mr. Chair, we could recess for 10 minutes and come back, or
I'd say that's a good idea.
hopefully 10 minutes.
All right. Without further objection, we'll recess for a 10-minute period, approximate 10-minute period, and resume accordingly thereafter. We are in recess. Let the record reflect it's 10:16. We've re-adjourned from recess. I'll turn the proceedings over to staff for now while we go through the resolution, and then on to Commissioner Manzanet for passage.
Okay.
Mark Kaminsky will present the item.
Okay, Mark Kaminsky, Director of Finance, Treasurer. This morning, we completed a very successful $80 million bond sale to be used for expenditures and capital in 2017, 18, and even part of 19. I passed out a document that Brad Vigut, Managing Director of Robert W. Baird, prepared, which summarizes the sale. So if you could turn to page 2, you've already seen this on the email I passed out earlier. As you saw, we received 10 bids, which is the highest number. More bids, more competition, better rate. And I'm amazed that's unbelievably close rate between 1 and 2, as we mentioned earlier. Page 3 summarizes the details of the bonds, description, amounts $80 million. We will receive the money on June 12th. Maturities are October 1, 2018 and through 2013. I'm sorry, 37. Our first interest payments, October 1, 2017. We can call these bonds in 2026, October 1, if we determine it would be to our advantage. Summarizes the ratings we have from the credit agencies and the true interest costs and the winning bidder, purchaser, Piper Jaffray. The last page, on page 4, lays out the debt service that will be paid out beginning in 2017. The first column is principal, the second column is interest. As part of this sale, we are receiving $5,579,230 of bid premium. So we'll receive not only the $80 million, we'll receive the $5,579,230. And by state law, when a public entity in the state of Wisconsin receives a bid premium, it must go into the sinking fund for that issue and be used to retire future debt service. So that $5,579,000 on June 12th will go into the sinking fund for the 2017 bonds when we receive it. Now, with that said, there's 2 resolutions, or what we call a cover resolution, which is the 2 paragraphs we have at the end of the document, and then you will have the award resolution with all the detail that we're waiting for bond counsel to bring down to us. We've added, since our last meeting, a additional paragraph to the cover resolution, and let me explain why, and it ties to the $5,579,000. So last fall, when we adopted a budget, we knew that we were going to be issuing bonds in 2017, but we did not know what the actual structure of that bond sale was going to be, so we had to set aside part of our tax levy for 2017 bond debt service. We designated as part of that tax levy $1.6 million even for the 2017 bonds. What this additional paragraph does is, recognizing now that we have this premium, which will cover our debt service on these bonds in 17 and 18 and part of 19, we'd like to the commission to approve the resolution transferring that designation to our 2015 A bonds. Therefore, we can use that in 2018's budget process and return it, keep our tax levy down as our ratepayers. Otherwise, it would sit in the sinking funds for 17, and we probably wouldn't be able to exhaust all that until 2020. So it's just using the money more efficiently now because of this premium. What we did was correct, because we didn't know what the final structure. Had this premium been less than $874,000, we would have still left that there. It's just the fact it's $5,579,230. That will pay for the debt service. So we've added that paragraph to transfer those debt service. It's staying in debt service. It's just going from the 17 issue to the 2015. And we've discussed this with in-house counsel, Susan, and bond counsel, and both agree that that is appropriate. Again, it's just more efficiently using the money from the tax levy. I thought they did. So we're just, then you'll get the detail. And what's taking long is, it's a detailed document, and it lays out all these debt service payments, all the true interest costs, everything out there. They do it over at Foley and Lardner's offices, proof it, send it over here, they're printing it out. So when we just talked, they had just received it, so I thought they'd be down here by now. So that's the second part of the resolution. That's when we refer to in the first paragraph of the resolution, resolved by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage Commission that the attached award resolution titled, that's the document we're waiting for, along with these two paragraphs. But I was happy because, believe me, 2.81, we're talking clean water fund loan interest rates. That's how good this is. And I was concerned because the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 3 times since our 2015 bonds. And I didn't expect it.
What do you think drove it?
Well, bad for all of us, especially me, who's getting near retirement, because I'm sure my retirement plans took a hit. But the stock market last week, losing 370. When the market goes down, people move to bonds for a sure thing. You may have a situation where people have seen the market run up quite a bit. We're going to take those profits, put them in a safe investment, like the district, and then I'm guaranteed my 2.8 interest over those bonds, and I've locked into my profit. So I really believe what helped us last week was the stock market dropping. But what's interesting is when we were in Don Niemer's office and we had the computer screen up waiting for the bids to come in, they didn't come in until about 1 minute and 30 seconds to go. So everybody's sitting there waiting to see if anything happens. I mean, it's such a volatile world. It's a global world. I mean, President Trump's overseas, he could say something. North Korea sends them, anything could happen, could affect these rates. And then they just came in, and 10 bids is just great.
So we were originally planning on doing this 2 weeks ago. The market was still high at that point, right?
It was a little bit higher. I mean, on May 15th, Baird sent us an estimated rate, and that had, well, I'll go back to when you approved the award resolution in December, or the district directed the district staff to start the process to issue debt. We were projecting 3.53. May 15th, it was 3.04. and today we got 2.82 or just under 2.82. So
Mark, these are all, this is a blind bidding process here where they just submit?
yeah, it's competitive bid, right?
Competitive bid, okay.
Yes. Unlike when we refunded our bonds in 2015, the 2015 C bonds, that is a negotiated sale, because what you do is you choose an underwriter before you go to the market, and it's basically, well, they're all good. I mean, they'll tell you they've underwritten billions of dollars, but it basically comes down to the fee. And once we chose the low fee, then you go to the market, and when you're doing a refunding or refinancing, you are looking for a certain amount of savings. If those savings aren't there, there is no sale, no refunding. So that's why it's negotiated versus competitive. You don't want to go to the market and then walk from these bonds, because if you did that again the next time, don't expect these people to be proposing, because they're not going to go through they understand they can lose because there wasn't low, but it's a competitive bid, and there was 12 people, I believe, firms originally signed up or expressed intent to bid, but 10 actually did bid, 11 or 12.
I'm just curious,
And this is 20-year level debt, basically.
you spoke of about a few 100-point drop here of late. Would that not probably be on top of speculation of having 8 years or so of market gain? So maybe seeing kind of the writing on the wall that we're nearing the descent in terms of an economy?
It's partial. I'm more concerned that interest rates have been so historically low that at the same time, you're concerned that, are you locking into 20 years at 2.8, and a year from now, that same 20 years could be 3.8 because interest rates are starting to go. I've been here 38 years. Our first bond sales were 8.6%, 9%. I remember my first mortgage was 15%. To get to this number, and we used to get people to come in, we've done this for a while now, is they'll discuss, you should do variable rate. And my question was, well, if we're at historically low rates, why would you do variable? Now, if I was at 9% and you would say this is out of the realm, that's where I would think you do variable rate, because you expect the rates to come down and then benefit. But when they're this low, take it and lock in and for 20 years.
Great for borrowers, poor for investors.
Right. And that's why the district, at the same time, on the flip side, our interest income hasn't been as much as in the recent years, because interest rates are just been low. So.
Right.
Mark, do you need to call them again and see where we're at?
Yes.
Maybe the elevator's stuck.
I love those breweries. Oh, yeah, we gotta use the cuss, man, right? I know he's a mark.
Are you coming down?
Alum, so.
You're on your way. Okay.
You're dead.
I don't know about
10 minutes ago.
Yeah. It was 10 minutes, 30 minutes ago.
Bleeds green and gold. Blue and yellow.
And thank you for waiting.
See, if one of us left, you guys would be in trouble.
Yes. One of you bid votes no, we're in trouble.
I think we're at minimum right now for quorum.
Huh?
For 2/3, or for a 2/3.
Need eight votes.
Stuff under the Global Water Intelligence Award. We'll talk about it.
Gotta run.
So I was told as long as we stay on noticed items that we can talk about stuff, since we're still in our meeting.
Here they come.
Never mind.
I just rattled the cage for you.
There you go.
Good for
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mayor. Go get them.
This looks like them. Thanks, Don.
While we're passing out the award resolution, I want to thank Don Namer, the controller, Brad Vigette, Robert W. Beard, Dave Ryan, and Jennifer Murphy, bond counsel. So it was a team effort. And how much lower was the rate? We don't have that. Okay. Commissioner Krieger asked me, and I was trying to calculate, but it's not quite that simple. But I was trying to compare 294 versus 282 from this year versus 15, how much that saved us on 80 million. But it did save us money, so. And with that, I can answer any more questions or.
So now we have the resolution that can be approved.
Yes. Commissioner Manzanet?
Thank you. So to close out the 5 items under the Policy and Finance Personnel Committee, item number 12 requires a two-thirds affirmative vote from the full commission for adoption. I'll make a motion on the resolution authorizing and providing the sale and the issuance of $80 million general obligation sewers system bonds, Series 2017A, levying taxes for the payment thereof, and all other related details. Resolved by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewers Commission that the attached award resolution titled "A Resolution Authorizing and Providing the Sale of the Issuance of the $80 million General Obligation Sewers System Bonds, Series 2017, levying taxes for the payment thereof, and all other related details," is adopted, and be it further resolved by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewers Commission that as a result of the receipt of a substantial premium on the Series 2017A issue of $1.6 million previously earmarked by the resolution 16-134-10 for payment of the debt service coming due in 2017 for the series of 2017A bonds will now be used for payment of debt service coming due on general obligations notes Series 2015A. That's my motion.
Second. Right. It's been appropriately moved and seconded. Is there further discussion from the commission? Seeing none, will the commission secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Eli?
Aye.
Commissioner Gramling?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Krieger?
Aye.
Commissioner Manzanet?
Aye.
Commissioner Swan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hermes?
Aye. The item is passed as presented. We thank everybody in attendance here. Good work on the financial team. And with there being no further business before the commission, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for waiting.
An MCM production.